Good morning, manifestors. Most people who try to manifest aren't doing it wrong. They're doing it incomplete. There's a part of this process that almost nobody shows you, and that's exactly the part that determines whether it works or not. Today, you're going to get the complete guide, the real mechanism. What it is, how it works, how to apply it, where it gets stuck, and how to finally break through. If you've tried before and didn't see results, stay here until the end. Because what was missing wasn't effort. It was this. Before we really dive in, I want to ask you one quick thing. If you're here because you want to understand manifestation in a way that actually makes sense, not the shallow version that floats around the internet, but the real process from the inside out, then this channel was made for you. Subscribe right here. Like the video, because what's coming next is going to go even deeper into what you're learning today. All right, let's get into it, because the first point is going to make you see this whole process differently. Visualize, think positive, ask the universe, and wait for it to arrive. That's probably how you learned manifestation works. Maybe from a video, a book, a live stream, a post that seemed to make total sense at the time. The version that spreads around the internet has simplified the process so much that it almost looks instant. You want money, you vibrate at the frequency of money. The universe delivers. You want to change your life, you affirm that you will, and things just fall into place. And at first, that sounds plausible. It makes intuitive sense. You watch, you take notes, you start trying. The problem shows up in the weeks that follow. You visualized, you affirmed, you believed, or at least tried to believe, and life stayed more or less the same. The bills kept coming, the opportunity didn't show up, the money didn't move. And then comes the conclusion most people reach. It doesn't work for me. Or worse, maybe I'm just not the right type for this. As if manifestation were a gift some people have and others don't. What happened there wasn't a lack of faith. It wasn't a lack of effort. It was that the version of the process you were taught was incomplete, and it left out exactly the parts that determine whether it works or not. What you learned wasn't wrong, it was incomplete, and that difference changes everything. So how does it actually work? Before we get there, I need to show you something, because incomplete understanding isn't just ineffective. It's worse than that. It actively gets in the way. Every time you try using the incomplete version and don't see results, something happens inside you. You install a new belief. I tried. It didn't work. And that phrase, repeated a few times, becomes a recorded file. Manifestation doesn't work for me. It's a cruel paradox. The attempt to change reality ends up reinforcing the belief that change is impossible. And there's a second layer that most people don't notice. When you visualize something you don't yet have, while feeling the emotion of someone who doesn't have it, the signal you send to your subconscious isn't "I want this." It's "I don't have this." Think of how a mirror works. A mirror doesn't reflect what you want to see. It reflects what's in front of it. And what was in front of it was absence, not presence. You can spend months doing abundance affirmations while deep down, your dominant emotional state is scarcity. And you know what the subconscious registers: scarcity, because it doesn't process the words you say. It processes the emotional state you're in. This isn't a lack of faith. It's a lack of understanding of how the mechanism actually works. The good news is that once you understand this mechanism, and that's exactly what's coming next, you stop working against yourself without even realizing it. Right now, as you're here, your eyes are picking up data. Your ears are processing sound. Your body is registering temperature, movement, pressure. Your mind is receiving information from every direction at once. The problem is that the human brain receives around 11 million bits of information per second through the senses, and consciously processes about 40. You are filtering out 99.9% of reality all the time without noticing. Who decides what gets through? a structure in your nervous system called the reticular activating system, and it has a simple rule. It prioritizes whatever is aligned with your beliefs, your dominant emotions, and what you usually focus on. You know when you start researching a specific car and then suddenly you start seeing that exact model everywhere? The car was always there. What changed is that your brain received permission to see it. Before, it filtered it out as irrelevant. Now, it flags it as priority. That's this brain filter in action. And there's an even deeper layer. About 95% of your daily behavior is automatic, driven by the subconscious, not by your conscious will. That means when you consciously decide, I want to change my financial life, there's a background program running in the shadows, with beliefs formed years ago, inherited patterns, emotionally encoded memories, and that program carries more weight than your intention. When I understood this, I stopped wondering why I always got stuck at the same point. The answer was right here. It's not a lack of effort. It's that the background program was pointing in the wrong direction. The full cycle works like this. Belief shapes identity. Identity filters perception. Perception directs action. Action produces results. Changing only the result without touching the beginning of the cycle is like cutting a branch and expecting the tree to stop growing. That's why you can desperately want to change your financial life and still act as if it's not possible. The desire is conscious. The program is subconscious. And the program wins. It's not the universe conspiring against you. It's your own internal system running the old script. So if the mechanism is this, belief, identity, perception, action, result, why do so many people understand the process and still get stuck? There's one piece that almost everyone ignores, and it's the most important piece of all. Most people who try to manifest start from desire, from what they want to have. More money, a thriving business, a different life. And then they use techniques focused on that, visualizing having it, affirming having it, trying to feel what it would be like to have it. The problem is that the subconscious doesn't respond to what you want. It responds to who you believe you are. And that identity didn't form out of nowhere. It was built over years by everything you heard about money growing up, by the patterns of the people who raised you, by the experiences that got recorded as this is just how things work for someone like me. That installs a reference point in the subconscious. What is normal for someone like you? And then something happens that took me a long time to understand. There are people who make money a bonus, a business that takes off, and within a few months they're back to the same place. They spend it all, lose the client, sabotage the partnership, invest in the wrong thing. From the outside it looks like bad luck. From the inside, it's the identity thermostat adjusting the temperature back to its default setting. It works exactly like a thermostat. If the room gets too hot beyond what was programmed, it cools back down. If the financial result goes beyond what the installed identity can hold as normal, the subconscious sabotages it back to the reference point. I'm not talking about pretending you're rich while you're in debt. This is a deeper shift, rebuilding from the inside out what you believe is normal for you, what you think you deserve, what you see as possible for someone like you. Because the question that drives the whole process isn't what do I want, it's who do I believe I am. So the right question isn't which technique to use, it's which technique actually changes identity, not just behavior. And that's when things get a lot clearer. Because once you understand that the subconscious responds to emotional states, not to intentions, you start to understand why some techniques actually work and others become empty rituals. The first is visualization. It works because the brain has difficulty telling the difference between a real experience and one that's imagined with enough detail and emotion. When you visualize with full immersion, not just the image, but the physical sensation in your body, the emotion of someone who has already arrived, the brain creates memories that function as real references. You're not daydreaming. You're installing future experiences into your nervous system. The mistake that destroys visualization is doing it without emotion. Image without emotion reprograms nothing. The second is affirmation. It works because repetition creates new neural pathways. That's how most of our beliefs were installed when we were children, without our permission, by the way. But there's a fatal mistake. Affirming something that the mind rejects as a lie creates resistance, not reprogramming. Not I am a millionaire when you don't actually believe that, but I am becoming someone for whom prosperity is natural. The mind accepts that. The process begins. The third is scripting, writing in first person as if the desired state already exists. Writing activates more regions of the brain than just visualizing or thinking. It combines language, imagery, and emotion all at once. For people with an analytical mind, the kind that questions everything and keeps testing whether something is true, scripting is especially powerful because it channels that critical thinking into the process instead of using it as a wall. 10 minutes in the morning, in first person, describing how you feel already living the result you want. Simple as that and far more effective than it sounds. And the fourth, the one closest to the real mechanism, is sustaining the state. Neville Goddard called it feel it real. Not imagining, not affirming. Feeling. With your whole body, with the emotion of someone who has already arrived. This was the technique that most changed my relationship with this whole process. Not because it's magic, but because it works directly on the state, which is what the subconscious actually reads. And there's one rule that connects all four. The technique is the vehicle. Emotion is the fuel. Remember what we covered earlier. When you apply the technique, but the internal state is one of absence, the wrong signal goes in. The result is the opposite of what you want. Without genuine emotion, any technique becomes just a ritual. And ritual without substance reprograms nothing. Quick pause right here. Everything you've seen so far, the mechanism, the identity piece, the techniques, is the foundation. It's the understanding that most people never had. But if you want to go deeper in a structured way, with a guided process to apply in your own life, I have something that can really accelerate what you do after this video. It's an ebook that goes beyond what a video can deliver. It takes exactly what you're learning here and turns it into a day-by-day protocol you can follow, including a diagnostic, an action plan, and specific strategies to unlock your financial life. The link is in the description. Definitely worth checking out. Now continuing, because from here we go into the mistakes, and these are the ones that silently destroy the process. You already have the mechanism. You already know the techniques. And something can still be destroying the process from the inside without you even noticing, because the mistakes in manifestation aren't obvious, they're subtle. And the hardest part is that many of them look like you're doing it right while they're happening. The first is focusing on the problem instead of the desired state. You spend the day thinking about what's missing, talking about what's missing, feeling the weight of what's missing. The brain, remember that filter we talked about, optimizes what receives the most attention and energy. You're not visualizing what you want. You're affirming over and over what you don't want. The second is internal conflict. I want money consciously, but money is hard in the subconscious. I don't deserve this recorded somewhere deep down. People who have a lot are dishonest. These beliefs are older and stronger than the intention you set last night. When the two collide, the subconscious wins. Every time. The third is technique without emotion, the mechanical ritual. You do the scripting while watching the clock. You visualize while mentally going through your grocery list. You recite the affirmation the way you'd repeat a multiplication table. As we saw earlier, without the right fuel, any vehicle stays parked. The motion is there, but the state that reprograms isn't. The fourth, and this is one I lived with for a long time, is constant checking. Why hasn't it arrived yet? That seems harmless. But it's the clearest signal that the internal state is still one of absence. Someone genuinely in the state of already having doesn't keep checking whether it arrived. Constant checking sends the signal of lack, and the subconscious registers that. And the fifth is manifesting from pain instead of decision. When the desire to change comes from fear, urgency, or financial panic, the frequency running through everything is fear of scarcity. That's not anyone's fault. It's the natural pattern of someone who's at their limit. But it's a pattern that needs to be recognized and shifted before the process can truly start working. Fear of scarcity doesn't attract prosperity. It reinforces the feeling of scarcity. The most dangerous mistake isn't not doing the work. It's doing it the wrong way for months, thinking you're on the right track, while the subconscious registers the opposite of what you want. But how do you know if you're on the right track when you haven't seen any results yet? This question stops a lot of people in the middle of the process. The lack of external evidence becomes fuel for anxious checking. And anxious checking, as we've seen, weakens exactly the state you need to sustain. There's a way to measure progress before the result shows up. And the indicators are concrete, not imagined. The first is a shift in perception. You start noticing opportunities that were invisible before. A conversation that wouldn't have caught your attention now seems relevant. A potential source of income that you would have dismissed now seems real. It's not coincidence. It's your brain's filter being reconfigured. What's being aligned on the inside starts showing up in what you're able to see on the outside. The second signal is a shift in spontaneous behavior, and this is one of the most concrete ones. You act differently without forcing it. You stop spending impulsively just to relieve anxiety. You start seeking out content about growth instead of escape. You make financial decisions that would have seemed risky before but now feel reasonable. When behavior changes without conscious effort, it's the subconscious operating from a new reference point. Alongside that comes a shift in tolerance. Scarcity-based situations, conversations built on victimhood, old patterns of self-sabotage, you stop tolerating them the same way. What used to feel normal no longer feels normal. That's the new identity taking root. Synchronicities start showing up too, not as magic, but as this brain filter doing its job. When you're internally aligned with something, the brain filters and prioritizes what's connected to it. Things that were always there start appearing. People, information, situations. And the clearest signal of all is a more stable baseline emotional state, less chronic anxiety, more of a sense that things are going to work out, even without external proof yet. The clearest sign that manifestation is in motion isn't the final result. It's when you realize you no longer tolerate certain patterns from your old life. That's the moment when real change has already begun. Now I need to talk about something specific, because when the subject is money, there's an extra layer of resistance that most people don't see. You can work on manifestation around confidence, health, relationships, and see results relatively faster. But when it comes to finances, things stall. You move forward a little, then slide back. You get close, then something knocks it down. It feels like there's an invisible ceiling nobody told you was there. That ceiling exists, and it has a name: financial identity. Almost everyone's subconscious carries a financial program that was installed long before you had any opinion about it. I grew up hearing phrases that most of us heard. Money doesn't grow on trees. You have to work really hard to get anywhere. People like us weren't made for that. Those phrases weren't opinions. They were installations. And they shaped what you believe, at a deep level, is possible and deserved for someone like you. This creates a financial identity recorded in the subconscious. And that identity functions like a ceiling, the maximum point your internal system considers normal for you. And there's an even heavier layer. Money isn't emotionally neutral. It carries the meaning of survival, of personal value, of worth. When finances are struggling, it's not just your bank account that takes the hit. It's how you see yourself. Less capable, less deserving. And that emotional weight is exactly what makes resistance around money stronger than resistance around almost anything else. The good news is that financial identity can change. It's not a permanent sentence. It's a program. And programs can be rewritten with the right tools and the right process. What separates people who manifest money from those who don't isn't technique. It's their relationship with their own sense of worthiness. And until that relationship shifts, the invisible ceiling stays right where it is, no matter how many affirmations you write. So what actually changes it? There's a protocol. And it starts with a diagnostic that most people have never done. Before any technique, you need to know what's already installed. Sit down for 5 minutes, close your eyes, think about having 10 times what you have today financially, and observe what comes up. Not what you want to feel, what you actually feel. Fear, disbelief, a sense that it's not for you, a strangeness at imagining that scenario. Whatever comes up is the material. It's what's installed in the subconscious as not normal for me. Along with that, observe your chronic emotional pattern. What emotion do you feel for most of the day? Anxiety, scarcity, urgency? That emotion is the signal you're constantly sending out. As we've seen, the subconscious responds to the state, not the intention. And identify the gap between who you are today and who that person would be for whom the result you want is completely natural. That gap between the two versions of you, that's the work. Once the diagnostic is clear, you begin the installation. Choose just one technique. Consistency with 1 beats inconsistency with 5. Scripting for 10 minutes in the morning or at night, in first person, describing how you feel already living the result. Visualization with full immersion right after waking up. And monitor your internal dialogue. When you catch a thought of scarcity or "I don't deserve this," consciously replace it. Don't suppress it. Replace it. Then comes the hardest part, sustaining. Maintaining the internal state when the external hasn't changed yet. You're going to have days when the numbers don't add up, when the opportunity doesn't show, when nothing seems to have moved. On those days, the process is being tested. Regression is normal. Giving up is the only option that doesn't exist. Revisit the diagnostic every 30 days. What feels lighter? What's still resisting? The work is progressive, and progressive means every cycle gets you closer to what you're building. But there's something that derails this entire process before it ever reaches the result. And it has nothing to do with any technique. It's the moment when external circumstances contradict the internal state you're trying to sustain. The bill arrives. The opportunity disappears. Someone around you questions what you're doing. And the temptation is enormous. Go back to the old pattern, because at least that one is familiar. That's the turning point where almost everyone gives up. The difference between waiting and sustaining is huge. Someone who's waiting is anxious. They check their account every hour to see if anything changed. They're in a state of urgency, feeling like it still hasn't come. Someone who's sustaining isn't waiting for the result to believe. They're believing before the result as part of the process. It's like someone who already placed an order at a restaurant. They don't keep walking into the kitchen to check. They know it's coming. External circumstances will test the new state. Not because the process is cruel, but because the environment around you is still responding to the old pattern. The people, the situations, the daily financial dynamics, everything still carries the memory of who you were. And if you pull back when you're tested, the signal that gets confirmed to the subconscious is, the old pattern is still true. Your environment matters a lot here too. You don't need to cut everyone out of your life, but you do need to be conscious about what you let in. Conversations built on chronic victimhood, constant scarcity around you, people who question everything. These are ongoing breaks on the process. Not because they're malicious, but because they reinforce the state you're trying to leave. And when you regress, and it will happen, remember this, regression isn't failure. It's the process testing whether the new identity is real or just a passing wish. Now, after all of this, there's one final piece, the most fundamental one. And it's the one that determines whether everything you've learned here becomes reality or just becomes another great piece of content you watched and forgot. There's one single thing that separates people who manifest from those who keep waiting. It's not the right technique. It's not the right timing. It's not having enough faith. It's a decision. Most people want to change their lives, but wanting is passive. Wanting sits around waiting for the right conditions to appear, for motivation to show up out of nowhere, for something external to give the signal. Deciding is different. Deciding is an internal commitment, not a promise made to feel good, but a declaration of who you choose to be, regardless of how things look right now. Manifestation begins with an identity decision, not a desire to have something. The question that activates the process isn't what do I want, it's who do I decide to be. Because when you become the person for whom the result is natural, the process starts moving forward, not through magic, but because perception shifts, behavior shifts, decisions shift, and the result is the consequence of all of that. I want you to take one thing with you from here, not an affirmation, not a ritual, a question. Who would I need to be for this result to feel completely natural to me? Write that question down. Take it to bed tonight. Sit with it before you fall asleep. And answer it honestly, not with who you wish you were, but with who you genuinely would need to become. That answer is the map for the real work. And you don't need to feel ready for this. You don't need perfect faith. You don't need to have resolved every block first. The decision comes before the preparation. You make the choice, and then you become ready. Let that sit for a second. Let it land. Today, after this video, there's a choice in front of you. Stay exactly where you are, which isn't anyone's fault. It's a choice too. Or decide who you're going to be from this moment forward. Not tomorrow. Now. And if you want the concrete next step after that decision, I left something here for you. If this video shifted something inside you, even just a small shift in perspective, then it did its job. Manifestation isn't blind faith. It's not ritual. It's not magic. It's the alignment between who you are on the inside and what you want to build on the outside. And that alignment begins with one decision. Just one. Leave a comment below and tell me what was the point that hit hardest for you. Could be the mechanism, the mistake you recognized in yourself, the concept of identity. Which one was it? I want to read them. And those responses really help me understand what people need to go deeper on in the next videos. If you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want the full application protocol, the link to the ebook is in the description. See you in the next one.